Part 28. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Bulletin Leng. Chapter 271. Lu's Haiping blinked and asked in confusion, Mu Cheng? I don't think I've seen you before. The black-clothed boy who called himself Mu Cheng smiled and asked back, do you really not know me? Hearing this, Lu's Haiping frowned slightly, then carefully looked at the black-clothed boy in front of him, quickly searching for his appearance in his mind, but did not find any impression. He scratched the back of his head and shook his head blankly. I don't know him, I have no impression. The black-clothed boy smiled and moved a few steps closer, and asked again, looked carefully again, do you really not know him? Lu's Haiping frowned even more, looked carefully, and finally shook his head hesitantly, no. I don't know him. He was very sure that he had never seen the other party, because the other party looked very handsome, and his gestures carried an extraordinary momentum, which was definitely not an ordinary cultivator. Especially, the other party's eyes were as deep as a pool, making people unpredictable, and vaguely brought him an inexplicable sense of oppression. It was as if he was facing a high and mighty immortal, which made him awed and fearful, and he dared not have the slightest disobedience. He did not understand why the black-clothed boy in front of him made him feel so scared. This was the second time Lu's Haiping had such a feeling. The first time was when he had just become a disciple, and he had a similar feeling. But that was because he was just a mortal at that time, and he could not bear the strong pressure of the soul when facing a powerful monk master. But this time, the other party frightened him so much just by his momentum, which really surprised Lu's Haiping and even doubted his perception. Even the peerless Tianjiao such as Feng Lingyuan, the young master of Fenglei Pavilion who appeared just now, did not have the temperament of the other party, and there was even a huge gap. If he had seen such a dazzling person before, he would definitely be impressed, and he would never have no impression like now. The black-clothed boy smiled indifferently and said, it doesn't matter if you don't know him, you will remember it in the future. The boy's smile was very sunny, like the warmest sunshine in winter, which made people want to get close to him. But at this moment, it did not relieve the pressure in Lu's Haiping's heart, but made him more nervous and flustered. He always felt that he was seen through by the other party, and all his secrets seemed to be exposed in the eyes of the other party. This feeling of being spied on was very uncomfortable. Lu's Haiping swallowed his saliva and forced a smile. Brother Mu is joking. Just call me Mu Cheng, the black-clothed boy interrupted him with a smile. Lu's Haiping was slightly stunned, then nodded and asked tentatively, don't you know what the Qin emperor did? The black-clothed boy pointed to a certain direction outside the city gate and smiled, I just finished my retreat yesterday, and I am not very clear about the current situation in the Tiankai domain, so I am a little curious about what happened here. Oh. So that's it, Lu's Haiping suddenly realized, and he was relieved. Since the other party had just come out of retreat, he must not know much about the current situation, let alone what the Qin emperor had done to anger the heaven and the people. After figuring this out, Lu's Haiping immediately felt relieved and briefly recounted the whole incident. So, the great Qin emperor is indeed extremely evil. He deserves to be killed. He deserves to be executed. The black-clothed teenager gritted his teeth and said indignantly. At the same time, he raised his right foot and stomped on the ground, crushing the stone slab to pieces, and two cold rays shot out of his eyes. If I catch that emperor, I will make him regret coming to this world. Lu's Haiping's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he nodded hurriedly, yes, we must catch that Qin emperor and enforce justice. This kind of foolish, lustful, and licentious dog emperor, it would be a bargain for him to die 100 times. The black-clothed teenager also nodded heavily, and said indignantly. That's right. That emperor, for his own selfish interests, actually captured so many fairies in our Tiankai domain, which is simply infuriating to both humans and gods. Hearing this, Lu's Hyping immediately had a doubled impression of the black-clothed teenager in front of him. He was right. The other party was also a young man with a strong sense of justice. Lu's Hyping thought of the eldest sister of his own sect who was captured. He shook his head and sighed slightly. The eldest sister of our sect was also captured by the tyrant. I hope she can turn the bad luck into good luck. Don't worry. Your eldest sister is blessed by heaven. I promise that she will be fine. The black-clothed boy patted his chest and said. Thank you, Brother Mew. Lu's Hyping said gratefully. You're welcome. By the way, I'd like to ask, what's your eldest sister's name? The black-clothed boy said with a smile. Lu's Hyping sighed lightly and said bitterly. Alas! My eldest sister's name is Xuanhuan. She is the eldest sister of our Chixia section. She is gifted and beautiful. She is a genius that our sect has rarely seen in 1,000 years. She is also the only daughter of our sect master. Unfortunately. Xuanhuan, the black-clothed boy repeated it again. Why, do you know our eldest sister? Lu's Hyping said suspiciously. The young man in black pursed his lips, his eyes revealing a hint of meaning. I seem to have heard of your senior sister's name. Lu's Hyping did not think much about it. After all, although their senior sister was not ranked among the top 10 fairies, she was also quite famous in the Tiankai domain and had many followers. He sighed again and said quietly, it's a pity that the last time our sect master took her to the northern border of the Qin dynasty to look for the immortal cave, she was captured by the Qin emperor, and even our sect master died. When mentioning this matter, Lu's Hyping was full of sadness and regret, his eyes showed a sad expression, his fists were clenched and crackling, his eyes were blazing, and his hatred was overwhelming. His senior sister who he had admired for many years was abducted by the Qin emperor. How could he not be angry and sad? Lost his beloved. Pain, too painful. For him, it was more sad than killing him. The more Lu's Hyping thought about it, the sadder he became, his nose turned red, and tears could not stop flowing down. He cried and shouted, the tyrant killed our sect master, abducted the senior sister, and many brothers and sisters, and his sins are too numerous to list. All the cultivators in our Tiankai domain have a blood feud with him. Lu's Hyping cried very sadly. The black-clothed youth raised his lips slightly, revealing a barely perceptible arc. Lu's Hyping was so sad that he didn't notice anything. His eyes were red, his voice was choked, and after a moment of silence, he continued to list the sins of the Qin dynasty. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mi and Bulletin Leng. Chapter 272. In addition, in order to consolidate the imperial power, the Hunjun of Qin actually slaughtered his brothers and ministers, causing countless people to be displaced and mourning everywhere. And all the saints from our apocalypse territory were tricked and killed by him. They were absolutely heart-rending and cruel. Such a foolish king should be cut into pieces with 1,000 cuts. That's right. Cut to pieces with 1,000 cuts, the young man in black echoed. The more Lu's Hyping talked, the more excited he became, and he continued. Moreover, in order to satisfy his own lust, this foolish king secretly colluded with the demon clan and established the fox clan as the demon concubine. He tried to conspire with the demon clan to subvert the apocalypse realm. It is really a wolfish ambition and must be guarded against. When he said these words, Lu's Hyping's expression was serious and solemn, his tone was impassioned, and he looked like he was loyal and courageous. After hearing this, the young man in black raised his eyebrows and said slightly surprised, "You even know about this?" Lu's Hyping sneered, "Humph. I am not the only one who knows this kind of animal behavior that is not allowed by nature. Every monk in our apocalypse territory would like to eat its flesh, sleep on its skin, crush its bones and raise ashes." The young man in black sighed and said sadly, "Alas." Then, he suddenly reached out his hand, patted Lu's Haiping's shoulder gently, and said sincerely. Fellow Taoist, although your cultivation level is low, you have a broad mind, which is really rare. When Lu's Haiping heard this, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. This sentence sounded like it was a compliment to him, but he always felt that something was wrong. However, Lu's Haiping was still praised with enthusiasm. After all, he could be recognized by such a strong person. His chest straightened up a lot, and he looked righteous and awe-inspiring. The corners of the black-clothed boy's mouth curled up slightly. He glanced at Lu's Haiping meaningfully, and said, "Since you hate this Hanjun so much, how about joining me to kill the Hanjun and rescue your senior sister?" Lu's Haiping was startled when he heard this, and then hesitantly said, "Brother Mu, is it just the two of us?" Although he hated the great Qin emperor deeply, he also knew that the other party was powerful, and Great Qin was even more unfathomable. Otherwise, the forces in the Apocalypse region would not have mobilized so much power, looking like they were facing a formidable enemy. How could such a powerful enemy succeed with the strength of the two of them? Lu's Haiping muttered in his heart. However, when the young man in black heard this, a look of pride flashed across his face, and he said, "It's just a faint king of the Qin dynasty. I can suppress him with just a snap of my fingers. It's nothing at all." Hearing this, Lu's Haiping was stunned for a while. He did not expect that the young man in black in front of him was so rampant. He couldn't help but frown and said, "Brother Mu, you can't joke, can you? That Hanjun's cultivation is unfathomable. Are you sure you can defeat him with one finger?" The young man in black smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, I will never take my own life for granted. Just follow me to Dakan, and I will definitely lead you to rescue your senior sister." Lu's Haiping blinked and subconsciously took 2 steps back. He now suspected that the other party had something wrong with his head. Even the strongest saint in the Apocalypse domain would not dare to say this. How dare this young man in black say that he can defeat the great Qin Hanjun with just one finger? The young man in black glanced at it lightly, with a trace of mockery on his lips, and said sarcastically, "Are you scared?" "Oh no. I just what? Are you just worried that I will lie to you?" the boy in black sneered, exposing his thoughts mercilessly. Lu's Haiping's face suddenly turned red and he said sarcastically, "You misunderstood, but I just remembered that it is said that the cultivation level of the great Qin Hanjun is unfathomable, at least at the semi-saint level." The young man in black shrugged and glanced at Lu's Haiping lightly. "A loser like you wants to take revenge. What did you say?" Hearing the insulting words of the young man in black, Lu's Haiping suddenly became furious, the veins on his forehead throbbed, and a ray of anger flashed in his eyes. "You are a weakling like you. You are not even worthy of carrying the shoes of the Hanjun of Great Qin. How dare you shout out the words 30 years of Hedong?" The boy in black shook his head and spoke calmly. But the calmer it became, the more Lu's Haiping felt insulted. "What do you mean?" he shouted angrily. The young man in black was too lazy to pay attention to him. Instead, he waved his sleeves and a mysterious spiritual energy swept out and enveloped him. Lu's Haiping only felt his body tighten, as if he had turned into a puppet, unable to move and completely out of control. "Ah, what are you doing? Let me go." Lu's Haiping was shocked and struggled desperately. He wanted to break free from this restraint, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break free. Instead, his body became stiffer and his movements became slower. Finally, his body stiffened, and then he felt a wave of dizziness, and his whole body fell to the ground uncontrollably. Bang! With a loud noise, Lu's Haiping fell to the ground, smashed into pieces, and felt severe pain all over his body. He was so horrified that he ignored the severe pain in his body and shouted loudly to the people around him, "Help me! Help me!" However, the strange thing was that the monks around him seemed to be deaf and did not react at all. They stood there and discussed the major ferries they had just seen as usual, as if they had not seen him at all. Damn. Lu's Hyping looked pale. He suddenly looked up at the young man in black and shouted, "Asshole, what on earth have you done?" The black-clothed youth stood there, with his hands behind his back, looking down at him with a playful smile. "Don't you want to use my head as a chamber pot? I'm here now. Do you want to come and try?" Hearing this, Lu's Hyping's pupils suddenly shrank, his mind was shaken, and his eyes were instantly filled with fear. You are. However, as soon as his voice came out, he could no longer make any sound. The whole person instantly turned into nothingness, dissipated between heaven and earth, and no longer existed. Qin Mu's expression did not change, and he smiled slightly. "Don't worry, I will definitely take good care of your senior sister for you." In fact, he wanted to let this guy see his senior sister again, and then seal his eyes, leaving only hearing, and then take good care of his senior sister. When he thought about it later, the river crab god was too terrifying, so forget it. Qin Mu looked up at the tallest building in Tianlang City and murmured, "These people are really troublesome, it's better to solve them as soon as possible." As he spoke, he took a step towards the main hall of Tianlang City. Boom! The Qin dynasty. Thunder and lightning raged over Chang'an City, dark clouds covered the sky, and the rolling thunder was like a silver dragon. Amid the thunder and lightning, a magnificent palace stood in the clouds. This palace was thousands of feet high, magnificent, as if it was the residence of an ancient god, overlooking all living beings. No matter how the thunder roared, it remained motionless, and the power of heaven was hard to hurt, as if it stood forever, immortal. In the sky around the palace, dense flying boats were suspended, blocking the sun. At this moment, on each flying boat, the strong men of the Qin dynasty were displayed, and millions of troops gathered, and the boundless killing aura spread across the 8 wildernesses and 6 directions. They gathered here to guard Chang'an City, and the atmosphere was tense and solemn. And in the deepest part of Chang'an City, in the towering Xuanhuan palace of the Qin dynasty, which was thousands of feet high, Imperial Master Du Yulan and other ministers stood on both sides of the hall, each with a stern face and silent. PS1, I wanted to write something you like, but the news is a bit tense recently, so forget it. PS2. Tomorrow is 2024, I wish you all a happy New Year's Day, a safe and peaceful New Year, all the best, all your wishes come true, academic success, and family health. The unhappiness of 2023 is not important, it has turned the page. 2024 will definitely be double the joy and double the happiness. Finally, I wish you all a new year of wealth and prosperity. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 273. National Master, according to investigation, there are currently tens of millions of monks gathered in Tianlang City in Tiankai Domain. Suddenly, a guard hurried into the Xuanhuan Palace and respectfully reported. In addition, nearly 1,000 sects and holy places have also sent strong men to help in the battle. The momentum is unprecedented. Having said this, the guard paused slightly and carefully glanced at everyone in the hall. Sure enough, all the ministers looked ugly. Imperial Master Du Yulan's brows were furrowed, his face was extremely solemn, and his eyes were as cold as knives, revealing a strong murderous intention. Tianlang City is the city at the junction of Tianlan territory and Tiankai territory. Now that so many Apocalypse territory monks have gathered, it is self-evident what their purpose is. What do you think we should do? Du Yulan turned to look at the other ministers, looked around and said in a deep voice. The other ministers looked at each other in confusion after hearing this. Every civil and military official looked solemn and did not dare to make any judgment. After all, the enemies this time are no small matter, they are all the top sects in the apocalypse domain. Among them are many super sects that are not inferior to the great Qin dynasty, as well as many holy places. If they participate in the war, the situation will definitely evolve into a magnificent and shocking battle. By that time, I'm afraid I don't know how many people will die and how tragic the losses will be. Just thinking about it gave them a shuddering feeling. After a long time, an old man finally sighed and spoke slowly. National Master, it is related to the safety of the Qin dynasty. It must be treated with caution and must not be acted rashly. I agree with Master Li, another minister also said. Upon seeing this, the other people nodded and agreed with the two people's views. What happened this time was no small matter. If their decisions put the Qin into danger, they would not be able to rest in peace even if they were under the spell of despair. They are not willing to be the sinners of the Qin. Du Yulan looked at the many ministers below with a bitter smile on his face and sighed slightly. Yes, even if they know that Apocalypse Domain is making big moves, what can they do? Now that His Majesty is not in Chang'an City, the Taiwan ancestor and others are also in seclusion, and the huge Qin dynasty has no leader, what should he do? With Du Yulan's sigh, the already heavy atmosphere in the hall became even more depressing. No one expressed their opinions anymore, they just stood silently. At this moment, the whole hall was silent. Only the thunder outside the window continued to roar, and lightning pierced the dark night sky, which seemed to indicate that a storm was coming. "Where is your Majesty?" after a long time, an official asked. "Your Majesty hasn't shown up yet." The guard shook his head. He glanced at Du Yulan, hesitated slightly and whispered, "Since your Majesty left Chang'an, he has lost sight of him, and there has been no news." After the words fell, the hall fell silent for a moment, and the atmosphere became weird. All the ministers in the palace looked at each other, with a trace of panic, worry, and helplessness flashing in their eyes. They had never seen a battle like this before. Instead of using the elite army, they used a group of delicate and weak women who had never been on the battlefield and even had low cultivation levels. Moreover, as soon as they left Chang'an City, they disappeared without a trace, no one could be found at all, and no news was even sent to the rear. Is this really a war? Even playing house is more professional than this. At this moment, these ministers seriously doubted that His Majesty's so-called personal expedition was just a joke. He didn't go to the so-called battlefield at all, but took those charming women to go sightseeing. Maybe His Majesty is now somewhere with beautiful mountains and rivers, enjoying the tenderness of being hugged from left to right. Thinking of this, combined with His Majesty's past actions, the more everyone thought about it, the more likely it was, and their hearts were filled with deep anger and helplessness. The majestic leader of a country was so irresponsible that he only cared about his own enjoyment and had no regard for the life and death of the people of Qin. Is he still worthy of being emperor? But they were angry, but they didn't dare to express it at all, let alone say it out loud. Otherwise, once His Majesty hears it, their heads will probably move. After thinking about this, the ministers present felt sad and desperate, but they did not dare to say a word. After a moment, Du Yulan took a deep breath and said, "Step back." After that, he waved his hand, indicating to the guards below that they could retreat. The guard bowed and quickly retreated. After the guards left, the hall fell into silence again. Everyone's eyes were focused on the high and empty dragon throne in the center of the Xuanhuan hall, with complex expressions in their eyes. After a long time, someone finally couldn't bear it anymore and said cautiously, "National Master, will something happen to your Majesty?" This sound was like a missile thrown into the lake, causing huge waves and attracting everyone's attention. All the ministers looked at Du Yulan, their faces full of anxiety. Although they thought that His Majesty was going to have fun, they were just guessing after all. No one is sure whether His Majesty will encounter any accidents. If there is an accident, the ministers were filled with worry and anxiety. Nowadays, Great Qin is in an extremely serious situation. Many sects and holy places in the Apocalypse region have gathered in Tianlang City. If they join forces to attack Great Qin, the current Great Qin alone will not be able to resist it. And His Majesty has not shown up yet. They are very worried that His Majesty has met with an accident. How dare you? At this time, a very fat man with oily face among the ministers snorted angrily, stared at the minister who was speaking, and scolded. Don't talk nonsense. Your Majesty is the Emperor of Destiny, with deep blessings, and is also the eternal wise monarch, blessing the people, and destiny is destined. How can there be any problem? Hearing Wang Xing's words, the corners of the ministers' mouths twitched slightly. Only a flatterer like you can say such words. They dare not say it, because they are afraid that they will be struck by thunder. Eternal wise monarch, blessing the people? Now who in the whole Qin dynasty doesn't know that His Majesty likes beauty, likes all kinds of women, especially likes married women? It's ridiculous. If such an emperor can be called an eternal wise monarch, then they are all wise ministers of the ages. However, the ministers only complained about these words in their hearts, and did not have the courage to say them in front of Wang Xing, the second most powerful minister of the Qin dynasty, otherwise they would definitely be in trouble. Hearing Wang Xing's scolding, the man who had just spoken suddenly shrank his neck, closed his mouth awkwardly, and dared not speak again. Du Yulin raised his head, glanced at Wang Xing, then glanced at everyone, half closed his eyes, and said lightly, Lord Wang is right. Your Majesty is the true Dragon Emperor, and his blessings will last for eternity. Nothing will happen. At the end, his voice suddenly rose several times, and he said it decisively. At the beginning, I gave the future Empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 274. In that case, Imperial Master, do we need to send troops to support His Majesty? In the hall, a general suddenly stepped forward and said in a deep voice. Du Yulin sighed and shook his head slowly, saying, No, His Majesty's whereabouts are uncertain now, indicating that he has other ideas or plans. If we rashly dispatch a large army to support, it will surely arouse the vigilance of the various forces in the Apocalypse domain, and then it may ruin His Majesty's great cause. But Imperial Master, now the enemy is strong and we are few, what should we do? We can't just sit and wait for death. The general frowned and asked, obviously a little crazy because of the tension of these days. Alas! Du Yulin sighed deeply, full of sorrow. But in the end, he still waved his hand firmly and said, Let's follow the original plan and order the entire army to be on alert, wait for His Majesty's orders, and be ready for battle. At the same time, closely monitor the situation in Dakan and Tianlang City, and report immediately if there is any unusual movement. After the voice fell, the civil officials all nodded in response. I will follow the instructions of the Imperial Master. Du Yulin glanced at the courtiers in the hall, then turned and left the hall. Looking at Du Yulin's departing back, the ministers present looked at each other one after another, with a bitter smile and worry in their eyes at the same time. Alas! Alas! Accompanied by sighs, all the ministers dispersed one after another, and the huge hall suddenly became empty. At this time in Tianlang City, on the bustling and noisy streets, a few divine beasts pulled an extremely luxurious flying boat from a distance and landed outside Tianlang City. This is a luxurious flying car emitting dazzling light. It is made of pure and transparent black ice, surrounded by a layer of light blue spiritual mist, as ethereal and dreamy as a fairyland, which is amazing. On the top of the carriage is a phoenix with its wings spread out, which is lifelike and vivid, and it seems that it may fly up from the car at any time. When the wheels rolled over the void, even tiny ripples were produced, as if stepping on the clouds. Obviously, this is a priceless treasure flying chariot. Around those carriages, there were hundreds of female guards dressed in black, with pretty faces and graceful figures. The strength of these female guards is unfathomable, with mysterious auras and a strong aura of decisive killing. At first glance, you can tell that they are women who have experienced real battles, not vases. And one of the female guards held a gilded flag, fluttering in the wind. There was a powerful golden lacquer character written on it, Celebration. The monks of the Apocalypse domain of Sirius City looked at the scene in front of them, and suddenly their eyes were puzzled. They stopped to watch and whispered. Qing. Who are they? Why haven't I heard of a sect called Qing in the Apocalypse domain? I haven't heard of it either, and these people seem to be all women. When did our Apocalypse domain have a women's sect? I don't know. I think they may be from a hidden family or section. Just as everyone was talking about it, a cultivator with rich experience shook his head and sneered. Haha, don't guess blindly. They are not from any section. The flag they hold is clearly the Daking dynasty of the Fengling domain. Daking dynasty? After hearing the cultivator's explanation, the onlookers suddenly realized. No wonder they hadn't heard of it. It turned out that they were from the Fengling domain. And these people also sighed secretly. No wonder these women looked so young and beautiful, but they had unfathomable cultivation. I see. No wonder they look so tough. Yes, it is said that the people of the Daking dynasty are brave and good at fighting. They have destroyed 2 dynasties in the Fengling domain. They are very powerful. Not only that, the Daking dynasty also has its own national guardian beast. It is said that its strength is extremely terrifying, even more powerful than the white tiger in our Tiankai domain's life-forbidden land. Tisk tisk, I didn't expect that people from the Daking dynasty would come to our remote town. Hee hee, I guess they are here to attack Dakin. It's going to be exciting this time. The surrounding spectators were talking about it. When they looked at the flying boat in the sky, their eyes were full of envy and shock. However, I heard that there was a big purge in the Daking dynasty recently. The original emperor of the Daking dynasty, Li Chengtian, died in Dakin. The current emperor is a female emperor named Li Qingluo, who was the original little princess of the Daking dynasty. At this time, a cultivator thought of something and suddenly reminded. As soon as this was said, everyone exclaimed. What? Li Qingluo? The little princess of Daking dynasty. I didn't expect that she would become the new empress of Daking dynasty. I heard that she is as beautiful as a fairy. I really want to see her in person. She is indeed very beautiful, but I like her ruthless side more. It is said that she killed many dissenters in order to become the empress of Daking dynasty. The capital of Daking dynasty has been flooded with blood. Every time I hear news about her, I can't help but shudder. Hush, are you looking for death? Can we talk about this? Everyone was silent, but there was still a hint of heat in their eyes. After all, Daking dynasty is the overlord of Fengling domain, with vast territory and extremely strong strength. Now, as the little princess of the Daking dynasty, she ascended the throne and ruled the world. With such a powerful existence in front of her, who would not want to take the opportunity to cling to her thighs? At this time, these female guards surrounded the carriage and slowly drove into Tianlang city. Hiss. A hiss suddenly sounded. The carriage stopped, and the curtain of the carriage slowly lifted up, revealing a peerless face inside. She was wearing a light yellow logo skirt, a jade pendant on her waist, her skin was as tender as snow, her facial features were gorgeous, and her eyes were like autumn water, as if they could capture people's souls. There was a blooming peony flower between her eyebrows, which added 3 points of enchantment, making her look particularly charming and seductive. She stretched out her slender white palm to open the car window, and looked out of her head. Is this Tianlang City? The girl's voice was crisp and pleasant, like pearls falling on a plate, clear and clean, like a silver bell, making people feel very comfortable. Two women in black clothes respectfully lifted the curtain. Then a slender and charming figure slowly came into everyone's sight. She had a slender figure, a graceful body, round and straight legs, a slender and even waist, and a waist that could be held in one hand. Coupled with her stunning appearance, it was enough to make any man crazy. The girl's bare feet stepped on the bluestone paved road, the bells hanging between her ankles made a jingling sound, and a wisp of light fragrance drifted with the wind, refreshing the heart. Your Majesty, please be careful. Two old women in armor came over and said with concern. I'm fine. The girl smiled and waved her hand, saying indifferently, without any of the cruelty and ruthlessness that everyone said. She looked around, her eyes were full of life, as if she was looking for something. P.S. The following words are not counted. Brothers, Len Mian is here today to complain about what I have encountered in the past few days. By the way, I will talk about the preparations for the recent engagement, so that brothers who have not yet been engaged can also have a reference to prevent pitfalls. I have been running around the gold shops in major shopping malls nearby these days, and I am ready to take advantage of the New Year's Day event to buy the 3 golds first. After all, the price of gold is too expensive now. The price of bare gold is more than 600 yuan, and the processing fee is nearly 700 yuan per gram, which is more than robbing money. It can be cheaper during the New Year's Day event. I have been dazzled by it for a few days. When I close my eyes before going to bed at night, it is all golden gold. I am almost crazy. But there is no way. The budget is so much, I must compare prices from 3 stores, and when choosing the style I like, I must also choose the most cost-effective one. Finally, after careful selection, I chose a small brand that I have never heard of, called Zhoujin's Hung. I don't know if anyone has heard of it, anyway, the author has never heard of it before, but it is the cheapest. I checked and found that it is also a regular gold shop with a national chain, so I chose it. There are a few things you must pay attention to when buying gold. When you enter the store, ask about today's gold price in grams and the market gold price, and then choose gold jewelry sold by grams. Don't buy gold sold at a fixed price, that is, gold sold at a marked price. Remember, some fixed price gold is as high as more than 1,000 per gram, which is a pit. Many saleswomen will recommend fixed price gold to you first because it has the highest profit. You should also check whether the name of the store and the words 999 pure gold are engraved on the gold. This is very important, remember. In the end, I bought a pair of rings, a necklace, a bracelet and a bracelet, spending about 40,000 yuan, and bought about 70 grams, which is about 570 per gram. It's really expensive. I can't earn 1 gram of gold from my manuscript fees for a few days. I really cry to death. I originally wanted to buy a diamond ring for engagement, the DR diamond ring that claims that one ID card can only buy once in a lifetime, but that thing is more expensive. It's ridiculously expensive. A diamond so small that it is almost invisible dares to sell for more than 6,000. How dare it? Also, a men's ring without any diamonds, just a ring that looks like a steel ring, dares to sell for more than 5,000. It looks no different from the rings I bought at the jewelry store for dozens of dollars. And there are no discounts even on New Year's Day. Their saleswoman said to me proudly, "Since the establishment of our brand, we have never made any price discounts. No matter when you come, the price is the same." Me. Okay, you are awesome, you are great, I won't buy it, okay. I will go to my father-in-law's house in 2 days, and I am starting to get a little nervous. I heard from my girlfriend that when her father first knew me, he was very silent and didn't say a word. What does this mean? At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 275. The girl blinked her beautiful eyes and looked around carefully. There is a sense of nobility and elegance in the gaze of his eyes, and there is a hint of laziness and spontaneity in his movements. Although he looks young, he has a vaguely majestic attitude that makes people want to kneel down in awe. This girl is naturally the empress of the Daking dynasty, Li Qingluo. Look, is that girl the legendary new empress of Daking? Yes, it's her. Sure enough, she is worthy of her reputation. She is indeed the little princess of the Daking dynasty. She is so beautiful. Yes, it is so beautiful. Especially now that she has become the empress, she gives people a sense of dignity and grace. I can guarantee that if she is from the Apocalypse realm, then she must have a place among the top 10 fairies of the Apocalypse realm. What do you need to say? How many women in the world can beat her? Seeing the girl walking out of the carriage, all the monks onlookers became excited and started talking. The girl's appearance was completely in line with their fantasy of the empress, especially her unique noble temperament, which made them feel that even the 10 fairies would pale in comparison when standing in front of her. Is this the legendary empress? A female monk in gorgeous clothes looked at Li Qingluo on the road, her pretty face flushed slightly. Such a majestic and magnificent empress, who conquered the country and conquered the city, even a woman like her couldn't help but feel her heartbeat speed up and her heart flutter. As expected of the empress of the Daking dynasty, she is indeed extraordinary. On the other side, a handsome man in white looked at Li Qingluo with a burning look in his eyes. I heard that Li Qingluo was originally just an unpopular princess in the Daking dynasty, but she was able to inherit the position of empress. She must have strong support within the Daking dynasty, right? Next to the man in white was a young man wearing a purple and gold jersey with a proud face. Hearing this, he snorted coldly. What's supported by a strong existence? In my opinion, it's just luck. The man in white shook his head. Don't underestimate her. I heard that her biological mother died young and was forgotten by her father for many years. How could she secure the position of empress if she relied solely on luck? Furthermore, after the death of Daking Emperor Li Chengtian, the Daking dynasty fell apart, and various forces were fighting. She was able to ascend to the position of empress on her own, and it was definitely not just luck. What's more important is that I also heard that all the princes with inheritance rights in the Daking dynasty died tragically overnight. There must be some secrets in this. The young man in purple robe listened to the man in white, and his arrogant expression gradually calmed down. What you say makes sense, but the empress is too young after all. The man in white waved his hand to interrupt him. I told you not to underestimate her. Since she was able to clear up all the discordant voices in the Daking dynasty in just a few days, it proves that she is not as immature as she seems on the surface. Perhaps she is more powerful than I thought. The young man in purple robe pondered for a moment, his eyes suddenly turned, and he suddenly looked at the man in white with enlightenment, showing a malicious smile. I see, do you have other ideas? The man in white raised his lips and showed a playful smile. Aren't you tempted? Certainly. The purple-robed young man shrugged and smiled. Who wouldn't be tempted by the empress of the Daking dynasty? The man in white chuckled, showing an evil smile. Ha ha, my fair lady, a gentleman is always asking for help. The young man in purple robe laughed loudly when he heard this. Okay. 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 Then let us compete to see who can pick this tricky flower first. Ha ha ha. A burst of laughter echoed through the streets, attracting the attention of countless people. Are these two people stunned? I must have been stunned by the empress. Many monks were confused and looked at these two people with disdain. However, some people recognized the identities of these two people and whispered. I know this man in white, his name is Sidu Chiang. He is a core disciple of the Zhenyang section. It is said that he is extremely talented. He has reached the Tao slaying realm through practice at a young age. He is very hopeful to become the next headmaster of the Zhenyang section. And the man in purple robe is not simple. His name is Cai Kun. He is the core disciple of Xuanhuan section. His strength has also reached the 5th level of the Dao Slayer realm. He is among the best among the younger generation in the entire apocalypse domain. He has great potential in the future. Limited. Everyone was suddenly enlightened when they heard this. No wonder these two people had the guts to talk about the Empress of Daking in public. She turned out to be the core disciples of Zhenyang sect and Xuanhuan sect. Listening to the discussions of the people around her, Li Qingluo frowned slightly and glanced at the two people on the street. Seeing this, Siduqiang and Cai Kun calmly stopped talking, and each showed what they thought was their most handsome posture and smile. Li Qingluo just looked away indifferently and continued to look around. The cold gaze was like looking at two stones, without any ripples. This scene immediately made Siduqiang and Cai Kun's expressions freeze. They are the leaders of the younger generation in Tiankai territory. How have they ever been treated so coldly since they were young? She didn't even give us a look. Could it be that she looks down on us? Cai Kun's face instantly darkened, and his tone was extremely cold. Snort. Siduqiang snorted coldly, with a gleam of light in his eyes. As a leader of the younger generation in the Tiankai domain, he was confident that he was the best in both appearance and qualifications. Now he was ignored by the other party. If I can't conquer her, how can I save my face? Siduqiang clenched his fists and gritted his teeth in his heart. He took a deep breath, suppressed his anger, calmed down, and said lightly, "Very good, this will make people more eager to conquer." Siduqiang stared at Li Qingluo's back with deep eyes. At this time, everyone also found that Li Qingluo seemed to have been searching for something, and began to speculate. She seems to be looking for something. Is she looking for someone? Is she looking for me? Bah, you don't even look in the mirror, you look like this, you should go home and take a shower. What did you say? Believe it or not, I will fight you to the death. Fight your sister. Everyone was clamoring and making a lot of noise. Li Qingluo frowned slightly, a look of longing and expectation appeared on her face, and she murmured in her heart, "Where is he? Why can't I find him?" A heroic and upright figure appeared in Li Qingluo's mind, and that familiar face made her feel warm every time she thought of it. She hadn't seen him for many days. It was so long that her longing was overwhelming, so long that she wanted to see him again every day when she woke up, and even wanted to give up everything just to be with him. When she thought of the good time she spent in those days, Li Qingluo felt sweet in her heart. Although it was only a few days, for Li Qingluo, it was the happiest few days in her life. Even her carefree childhood could not compare with it. I wonder if he misses me. Li Qingluo's cheeks were slightly red, and she was beautiful and unparalleled. Siduqiang looked at Li Qingluo, who sometimes frowned and sometimes lowered her head shyly. After thinking secretly in his heart, he prepared to walk forward and get close to her first. And at this moment, the curtain of the luxurious carriage was lifted again. Then, a tall woman in a black dress walked out of the carriage slowly. She was tall, with perfect curves, and her skin was as white as jade, exuding amazing temptation. She just stood casually, but the temperature of the air around her seemed to drop suddenly, making everyone's hair stand up. She had a beautiful face, but there was a strong sense of hostility between her eyebrows. Especially her pair of dark eyes like stars, which bloomed with extremely cold murderous intent, making everyone's soul tremble and their breathing choked. Hiss. Everyone took a breath of cold air and retreated, with fear in their eyes. This woman. Siduqiang's pupils shrank suddenly, and he subconsciously took 2 steps back. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 276. What a terrifying murderous intention. This woman may have endless blood on her hands. Situ Chiang's pupils shrank, looking at that stunning figure. His heart was slightly frightened and he did not dare to act rashly. This kind of murderous and evil spirit is definitely not produced by killing alone, but a kind of killing spirit that seems to come from the nine nether hell. Situ Chiang paused, squinted his eyes flickered slightly, and a thought came to his mind. Could it be that she was the supporter behind the empress of the Daking dynasty? Only people of this level can possess such terrifying murderous aura, right? Besides Situ Chiang, Cai Khan's expression also changed, his eyes filled with fear and a hint of hidden passion. Not far away, the rest of the people were also looking eagerly at the newly appeared woman in black skirt. Who is she? She is so fierce. Someone couldn't help but ask. I don't know, but I feel that his aura is stronger than that of our sex ancestor. She should be a powerful being from the Daking dynasty, right? So beautiful, not much worse than the Empress of Daking. I suddenly feel like I'm in love again. Haha, are you dreaming again? Get out of the way, my urine is yellow, let me wake him up. Everyone was whispering, and their eyes fell on the woman in the black dress. They were scared and full of longing for beauty. At this moment, the woman in black skirt suddenly turned her head and scanned everyone. Suddenly, everyone's voices stopped. They were all startled, their hearts were beating fast, they swallowed involuntarily, and their eyes were fearful. How terrible! Just a simple glance can send chills all over your body. Those people just felt that if they dared to say another word, they would be torn apart. What a strong murderous aura! Cai Khan felt the fierce gaze cast by the woman in black skirt, and his heart suddenly trembled, and he did not dare to look at her. Dense beads of sweat broke out on his forehead, and his body was shaking slightly. The murderous aura was so strong, it was like being in a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. It made one's liver and gallbladder split and it was difficult to control oneself. Cai Khan's eyes completely converged, and he no longer dared to look at him arbitrarily, for fear of offending the other person and causing bad luck. Situ Chiang was also frightened, his face became serious, and he did not dare to move forward any further. Chu Qianyu's gaze swept across the entire audience, and when he noticed that everyone was looking at him with fear and awe, a disdainful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The next moment, she took action decisively without any warning. Boom! In an instant, Chu Qianyu's right palm turned into a piece of ice, filled with biting cold air, and was slapped hard. Not good. Situ Chiang's face changed drastically and he hurriedly took action to resist. However, as soon as he raised his hand, a huge frosty palm was printed on his chest. A majestic force burst out, and the entire area instantly turned into a glacier. Situ Chiang spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew out like a rag doll. He crashed into a wall and fell to the ground, turning into frosty debris on the ground. He died with no eyes open. Kill instantly with one hit. How is this possible? Cai Khan's eyes widened with shock. And then, as if he suddenly realized something, his expression changed wildly, and his figure disappeared instantly. But, it's still too late. Aha! The moment Cai Khan disappeared, a shapeless and invisible illusory hand grabbed his neck and lifted him up. Help! Cai Khan struggled desperately, his face turned red, he was panic-stricken, and he yelled crazily. However, everyone around him was so horrified that they couldn't care less about him. Help! Let me go! Let me go! Cai Khan struggled violently, his eyes bulging and his tongue stretched out. At that moment, he only felt as if he was about to suffocate. But that illusory big hand was still as steady as a mountain, motionless. Click. Finally, with a crisp sound, all the bones in Caicon's body were violently broken. He groaned miserably, his eyes bulged, his body fell straight to the ground, and he died. Even his soul was crushed into powder and floated in the void, never to be reincarnated. This scene happened so fast that no one could react in time. Silence, deathly silence. Everyone present was shocked. Everyone's eyes widened and they were stunned, with disbelief written all over their faces. Siduqiang died on the spot without even asking for mercy. Everyone was silent. The scenes just now seemed to contain some kind of magic power, deeply imprinted in everyone's mind. Do you also want to die? Chu Qinyu was sitting high up, and his indifferent voice echoed through the sky. In an instant, everyone trembled, as if falling into an ice cellar. Spare your life. Fairy, spare your life. Everyone knelt on the ground and quickly begged for mercy. Although they were members of various major forces and were usually very majestic, at this time, they had no arrogance at all. Snort. Chu Qinyu snorted coldly, then stopped paying attention to everyone, walked silently behind Li Qingluo, and said softly, "Stop looking, he is not here." Not here. Li Qingluo's body froze, and her pretty face that was originally full of joy instantly dimmed. Senior. Li Qingluo lowered her head and looked very disappointed. Call me senior. I've told you so many times, just call me sister. Chu Qinyu smiled slightly, stretched out her slender white hands, and rubbed Li Qingluo's soft hair. Okay then. Li Qingluo nodded, hesitated for a moment and said, Sister, didn't you say, he is in Tianlang City? She raised her head, her eyes were full of expectation and desire. Chu Qinyu nodded slightly, with a smile in her clear and bright eyes. Yes, he is indeed in Tianlang City, and it is not too far from here. Hearing this, Li Qingluo's face suddenly showed joy. Sister, then take me to find him. She grabbed Chu Qinyu's arm, her eyes full of hope. Chu Qinyu looked at the other person's appearance, and the corners of his mouth could not help but slightly outline a curve, shaking his head and said, You, don't forget where we are now. Don't be too excited when you see him later, otherwise it will be troublesome if you are exposed. I understand. Li Qingluo nodded obediently. Although she was eager to see Qin Mu, she also knew the importance of urgency and would never make a mistake at this critical moment and hold Qin Mu back. Well, let's go. Chu Qinyu gently patted Li Qingluo's shoulder, and then walked towards the tallest building in Tianlang City. Chu Qinyu's cherry lips curled slightly, and a hint of spring appeared between her eyebrows like distant mountains, diluting the murderous look in her beautiful eyes. She also missed Qin Mu. The departure of Chu Qinyu and the others made everyone feel relieved, as if a heavy burden was lifted, and they all collapsed on the ground, as if they had been pardoned. What a devil! He kills people when he disagrees with them, and he killed 2 people of high status at once. Yes, he is even more cruel than the legendary devil. SHH, keep your voice down, don't get yourself into trouble. Alas, this lady is finally gone. I almost peed myself just now. Everyone patted their chests with lingering fear, feeling like they had saved their lives. In the center of Tianlang City, there is a vast, majestic, and magnificent palace complex standing in the center of the city. At this time, the palace gathered the elders and major sect leaders of thousands of sects in the Tiankai domain. They were all dressed in luxurious clothes, dignified, and elegant, like a generation of celebrities. At a glance, there were tens of thousands of them. These people were sitting or standing, clearly divided, talking and discussing with each other. And somewhere in the hall, a slender young man in black was sitting in the middle, chatting with a woman in a white dress. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 277. The woman's face is stunning and her skin is as beautiful as snow. Her beautiful long black hair is spread over her shoulders, flowing like a waterfall, and her delicate facial features are like a goddess from the 9 heavens descending into the world. Her infinite charm exudes, attracting the attention of everyone around her, both men and women. The young man in black who was talking to her at this time had sharp eyebrows and starry eyes. He was extremely handsome and tall. He wore a dark gown that wrapped his slim body, and his waist was straight. There is an awe-inspiring and heroic aura about him, like a sharp sword unsheathed, sharp, and like an ancient pond that is still, restrained and deep. His eyes are as warm as jade, his temperament is calm and elegant, and there is a slight smile at the corner of his mouth, giving people a feeling of spring breeze, and his whole person is filled with the flavor of sunshine. Just by looking at the skin, one can tell that the young man in black must be a handsome young man with extraordinary bearing. Fairy Mu, there is an evil aura hanging between your brows, and you seem to be depressed. If you don't resolve it, I'm afraid it will affect your future practice. The eyes of the young man in black rested on the woman in the white dress opposite. His eyes were impartial, not obtrusive, and without any distracting thoughts. They were as pure and clear as crystal, without any blasphemy. The voice is soft and the tone is also very sincere, full of concern, which makes people feel good about him. The woman in the white dress was Mu Kingzi, the Holy Lord of the Lighting Holy Land. After hearing the words of the young man in black, she couldn't help but frown slightly. A look of worry flashed in his eyes. "Thank you, Master, for reminding me." In the past few days, she had indeed been worried about the matter of shaking Light Holy Land. She was so worried that she could not sleep at night. Whenever it is quiet at night, I can't help but think of the dead Yaoguang saint ancestor and the female disciples of the Yaoguang Holy Land who were kidnapped by the Great Qin. Especially Yaoguang Saint Chen Yaxi, the disciple she trained with her own hands, is now suffering from pain and torture that she cannot imagine. But now she can only sit here and wait for the opportunity, unable to help. How could this make her not feel guilty? How can you not be sad? Mu Kingzi really wanted to leave here and go to Dakan to rescue Shen Yaxi. But if something happens to her, then the entire shaking Light Holy Land will lose its support and may collapse immediately. Therefore, she could only continue to wait for the time being. Mu Kingzi sighed secretly in her heart, and at the same time she hated the Emperor of Qin extremely. This Emperor of Qin is really hateful, he dares to imprison the disciples of Yaoguang Holy Land. She will never let that guy go. Mu Kingzi bit her silver teeth secretly, a cold light flashed in her eyes, and murderous aura surged on her pretty face. "Fairy Mu, I'm not being alarmist, but your state is really unsustainable, otherwise it may cause the devil to enter your body, and you may become possessed. When the time comes, no matter how strong you are, you will not be able to withstand the erosion of the demon." The young man in black frowned and said with a solemn look on his face, obviously what he said was not false. "Well, thank you young master for your advice. Kingzi will take it to heart." Mu Kingzi came back to her senses, suppressed the murderous intent in her eyes, nodded towards the young man in black, and showed a beautiful smile, like a snow lotus blooming on the top of an iceberg, cold and aloof. Everyone's eyes lit up and they were amazed. At the same time, they were extremely envious of the young man in black who was talking to Mu Kingzi. They were truly lucky to be able to talk to such a peerless woman like Mu Kingzi. They also wanted to go, but they didn't have the courage of the young man in black. You must know that Mu Kingzi is known as the #1 fairy in the Apocalypse domain, and her personality is extremely cold and aloof. Ordinary people cannot approach her at all, let alone talk to her. Even monks like them, whose status is extraordinary, find it difficult to get close to him, and it is even difficult for them to even speak to him. But now, the young man in black couldn't help but chat with Mukingze, and even made the beautiful women smile. How could he not make them envious and jealous? However, the young man in black didn't seem to care about the envious and jealous eyes of these people at all, and he still smiled and was generous. Who is this young man? Which sect does he belong to? Why have I never seen him before? Everyone was whispering and discussing endlessly, full of doubts about the young man in black. I don't know him. He must not be a genius disciple under the major holy masters. Otherwise, I must have heard of him, but I have never seen him. Looking at how he is dressed, he is quite low-key. He may be a disciple of some hidden section. Humph. Even a disciple of a hidden sect cannot be worthy of Fairy Mu. That's right. Fairy Mu is a talented woman who has attracted much attention in the Apocalypse territory. How can an unknown person like him be able to reach such a high level? Everyone was talking and looking at the young man in black with hostility. Fairy Mu, the #1 fairy in the Apocalypse territory, has an appearance that will captivate the entire country. She has a graceful figure, and her whole body exudes a cold and ethereal fairy charm. And there is no doubt about her strength. She has reached the 3rd level of Saint Realm in less than 100 years, and she can be called a monster. Countless young heroes and powerful men from the sect fell under Mukingze's pomegranate skirt. In their minds, Mukingze was a fairy and an existence that could not be desecrated. It's a pity that Mukingze remained indifferent and didn't even bother to pay attention. This also made many monks who admired Mukingze feel sad. But at this moment, they saw a strange young man in black chatting happily with Fairy Mu, which made them feel very uncomfortable. Since Fairy Mu knows what's going on, I won't say much, but I hope Fairy still takes care of her health. As the saying goes, it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. The black-clothed young man smiled and said softly. After hearing this, Mukingze's delicate body trembled slightly, a strange light flashed in her beautiful eyes, and a little more gratitude appeared on her pretty face. For some reason, she, who always hated men, felt an inexplicable sense of security when she saw the other party, as if she saw a long-lost friend. A strange ripple appeared in her heart, making her heart ripple slightly. She looked at the other party with her beautiful eyes and opened her red lips. I have been chatting with the young master for so long, but I still don't know his name and who his master is. Speaking of this, Mukingze's pretty face flushed slightly, and she was a little embarrassed. She had been chatting with the other party for a while, but she had not asked the other party's name and identity yet. First, she was not interested. She was sitting here peacefully. But the other party came over without hesitation and started talking directly. She was a little surprised. No man had ever dared to be so proactive, so casual and wanton in front of her. Second, she felt that there was no need to waste words. After all, there was not much intersection between two strangers. Why should she ask about his name and identity? She was not so idle. But now, the young man in black helped her get rid of the hostility in her body, which made her situation much better. She really wanted to ask the other party's name and origin. And as the conversation went on, Mukingze became more and more curious about who this person was. She always felt that the young man in black in front of her had a special temperament, which made her trust him invisibly. The young man in black smiled lightly and said softly, "I am just an unknown person. My name is not worth mentioning. Fairy Mu, don't mind it." A hint of disappointment flashed in Mukingze's beautiful eyes. She originally thought that the other party was a disciple of a major sect, or a core disciple of a top force. But from the black-clothed youth's voice, it seems that he is not willing to reveal his identity. Although she felt a little regretful, Mukingze did not ask further. To her, the black-clothed youth was just a passerby. Even if they met in the future, they would probably be just strangers. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 278. Anyway, I would like to thank you for your reminder. If there is an opportunity in the future, you can visit Yaoguang Holy Land. Kingza will definitely cook wine and entertain you. Mu Kingza cupped her hands in front of the young man in black and thanked him softly. Her voice was clear, sweet, and intoxicating. Fairy, you don't have to be polite. There will definitely be opportunities in the future. The young man in black said with a slight smile. A strange look appeared in the depths of his eyes, and he would bite those two words very seriously in the future. Mu Kingza didn't think much, smiled sweetly, nodded gently, and expressed her agreement. The young man in black also smiled and said, fairies are blessed with profound blessings, and they will definitely turn evil into good fortune. They will have a worry-free journey to immortality. I will take my leave now. Immediately, the young man in black turned and left, his back looking cool and decisive, without lingering for a step or staying for a moment. This scene made Mu Kingza stunned for a long time, and a trace of melancholy could not help but arise in her heart. This was the first time she had seen such a young man, neither humble nor arrogant, but open and honest. It gave her a very warm feeling, and she didn't know what was going on. In short, she became very interested in the young man in black in front of her. And she is still very conflicted. She has always been proud of her charm, but this man doesn't seem to appreciate her charm. I'm telling you, Lord, Holy Lord, they have already gone far away. Why are you still looking at their backs in a daze? Behind Mu Kingza, a female elder from the shaking light Holy Land couldn't help but laugh when she saw this, with a playful curve on her lips. Upon hearing the female elder's words, Mu Kingza's pretty face suddenly turned red, and she looked back with a shy and angry look. She was about to explain a few words when suddenly a biting cold wind blew by, ruffling her hair and making her delicate and pretty face even more attractive. I saw a woman wearing a light yellow dress coming out of the air. Her skin was as good as snow and her figure was graceful. And accompanied by a jingling sound of bells, a string of crystal clear jade pendants worn on the woman's ankles swayed, ringing and ringing. The woman's facial features are exquisite and charming, her figure is slender, and her whole person exudes an aura of elegance and nobility. The woman is none other than the new empress of the Daking dynasty, Li Qingluo. The appearance of this woman instantly attracted the attention of countless people in the hall, and everyone's eyes fell on her. Who is this? Is she the daughter of a big family? Why have I never seen her before? No, look carefully at the jade plaque around her waist. It says Qing on it. The Qing family of the wind spirit realm. Someone recognized the woman's identity. SHH, keep your voice down. That's the Empress of Daking. It's her. No wonder her temperament is so extraordinary. I didn't expect her to come so quickly. She should be the first force from the wind spirit territory to arrive here. Then the great Qin dynasty killed her father. He must be eager for revenge, so he came so quickly. So that's it? Everyone was talking in low voices, their tone full of appreciation, and they were happy and shocked by Li Qingluo's arrival. The arrival of the Wind Spirit Domain forces means that their Apocalypse Alliance has become stronger. At the same time, it also means that the demise of the Qin dynasty is a certainty. No one can stop you. See Your Majesty, and congratulate Your Majesty on your successful arrival here. Your Majesty, you are finally here. We have been waiting for you for a long time. See Her Majesty the Empress. Her Majesty the Empress has come all the way and really made our place flourish. After seeing Li Qingluo, many members of the Apocalypse Alliance saluted respectfully. Li Qingluo had a calm face and glanced indifferently at everyone present. She happened to see the back of the young man in black and couldn't help but be startled. Then a hint of joy appeared in her eyes, but it was quickly suppressed into the depths of her eyes. Then she glanced around, finally stopping on Mu Kingza. Her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold light flashed through her eyes. If I read it correctly, it was this woman who was pestering his Qin Mu just now, right? Thinking of this, a sour feeling flashed across Li Qingluo's eyes. As her mind turned, she had already taken lotus steps and came to Mu Qing's side. Mu Qingze noticed someone approaching and looked up. When she saw Li Qingluo's stunning face, she was stunned for a moment. Her beautiful eyes flashed with surprise and doubt, and she thought to herself, "Is this woman the Empress of Daking? She is extremely beautiful, but why does she have an inexplicable hostility?" Mu Qingze looked at Li Qingluo carefully, her eyebrows furrowed slightly, and she was a little confused, wondering where the other party's hostility came from. While she was thinking, she suddenly felt an icy cold air invade her body, as if it could freeze her blood. Mu Qingze shuddered in her heart, frowned, subconsciously took a few steps back, distanced herself, and stared at Li Qingluo warily. No. No, this cold air is not coming from the Empress of Daking, but the woman in black dress behind her. Mu Qingze woke up suddenly and stared at the woman in black dress behind Li Qingluo. A solemn look appeared on her pretty face. She could clearly feel the dangerous aura emanating from the woman in black. This woman in black is definitely stronger than her, and may even be higher than her master. Mu Qingze's eyes narrowed slightly, and she vaguely guessed the true identity of this woman, but she was not sure. What's even more confusing to Mu Qingze is that she definitely didn't provoke them, so why did she arouse the hostility of these two women? This fairy is the Holy Lord of Yaoguang Holy Land, Fairy Mu Qingze, right? Li Qingluo looked at Mu Qingze, a touch of surprise flashed in her eyes, and a sense of crisis emerged in her heart. As a woman and opponent, she had to admit that the other party was perfect, and even a little envious. She is so beautiful, she will definitely become her powerful opponent in the future. No, I must suppress her arrogance now, so as not to lose the competition for favor in the future. Li Qingluo secretly clenched her fists. "It's me, I wonder what the Empress wants to do with me," Mu Qingze asked calmly. Although she didn't know why the other party was hostile to her, this was the Tiankai realm, and she was not afraid of the other party. "Nothing, just get to know the fairy." Li Qingluo smiled, revealing two shallow dimples, looking extremely charming. Mu Qingze heard the words, blinked her beautiful eyes, and her heart was full of doubts. What does this Daking Empress want to do? At this time, Qin Mu, who was dressed in black, also saw this scene, and a hint of amusement flashed in his eyes. "Oh, is this the legendary Shura Field? Warm Ti. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future Empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 279. The black-clothed youth was naturally Qin Mu. He originally wanted to suppress the major forces of the so-called Apocalypse Alliance directly, but when he learned about the situation, he found that the forces of the Wind Spirit realm had not arrived yet. If he acted rashly, it would cause a commotion and even alert the enemy. So Qin Mu could only hold back for the time being and wait and see before making a decision. After all, his idea was to catch them all in one fell swoop to prevent future troubles. And the rewards issued by the system later made him more determined in this idea. Ding! It was detected that the host had lost contact after the Imperial expedition, and only cared about his own enjoyment, regardless of the concerns of the entire court, and the people were in panic. It can be called a classic among the stupid. Obtained stupid reward, Immortal Binding Rope. Immortal Binding Rope, immortal level, can bind all creatures and make them unable to escape. No matter how powerful their cultivation is, they can do nothing, even immortals have to wait for death. Looking at the golden rope in front of him, even Qin Mu's extraordinary mind couldn't help but change his face slightly. This is simply a top-grade artifact. Although he has many powerful treasures, compared with the effect of the immortal binding rope, those things are obviously inferior. If he uses this immortal binding rope, not to mention the fairies in the world, even the real fairies in the sky may not be able to escape, right? This is simply tailor-made for him. This reward made Qin more determined not to take action for the time being. If he solved these people so quickly, he would not get more system rewards. But before that, he didn't mind talking about his life ideals with the first fairy of the Apocalypse domain, the Holy Lord of Yaoguang, Mu Qingzi. After all, we will always meet each other honestly in the future, so we should get to know each other in advance so that we can be prepared. But what Qin didn't expect was that he had just learned about Mu Qingzi, and Li Qingluo came. She looked excited, as if she was going to challenge Mu Qingzi to a fight. As expected of the new empress, her style of doing things is indeed vigorous and domineering. Qin mouth drew a curve. Since they had already started the Shura field in advance, there was no need for him to intervene. They would collide sooner or later anyway, and maybe they were good sisters in the upper and lower positions, so it would be good for them to understand each other's personalities earlier. Qin stood there with interest, and he couldn't wait to see what kind of splashes the two women could make. After all, the Shura field is not something you can encounter at any time. Some of the women around Qin were forced by his majesty, some by his terrifying strength, and some by his means. In short, they were all controlled by him, and each of them was very obedient, and this situation rarely occurred. Even if there was, it was done secretly in private, and he rarely saw it. So this kind of excitement is not common. He stood there with his arms folded and watched the changes. I admire you very much, fairy, and I especially hope to make friends with you. Li Qingluo smiled lightly. The reason why she came so early was because she wanted to understand the movements of the Apocalypse Alliance as soon as possible, and then inform Qin, but she didn't expect Qin to be here. So she had nothing to do next, and she could spare her energy to talk to the Yaoguang fairy in front of her. Mu Qingzi frowned slightly, her eyes were a little suspicious. She had never met Li Qingluo before, and there was no intersection at all. Why would the other party take the initiative to approach her? The more Mu Qingzi thought about it, the more confused she became. She didn't understand why. Your Excellency, the Empress is too polite. Mu Qingzi also smiled slightly, and said in a calm tone, I also admire the Empress. No need to call me that, just call me by my name. Li Qingluo waved her white hands and chuckled, if the fairy doesn't mind, we will call each other sisters in the future. Mu Qingzi hesitated for a moment, then responded softly, okay. She was even more confused now. She was obviously very hostile just now, but now she was in an intimate posture. Mu Qingzi shook her head secretly, wondering what Li Qingluo was up to. At this time, Li Qingluo smiled brightly, her eyes curved like a crescent moon, very cute, but what she said made Mu Qingzi's eyes go dark. Sister Qingzi, you should be much older than me, right? I call you sister, you shouldn't be angry, right? Li Qingluo smiled sweetly, her smile was very bright. Her tone was full of coquettish charm, which made people feel soft to the bone. Mu Qingzi was stunned for a moment, and finally the corners of her mouth twitched slightly, and a few black lines appeared on her smooth forehead. Where is she old? Although it is true that she is hundreds of years old, according to the lifespan of mortals, she is indeed an old man. But for cultivators, as long as they reach the sage realm, they have a long lifespan. Thousands of years are like a snap of fingers, fleeting, and even the time scale of 10,000 years is nothing to some sage realm cultivators who specialize in the way of longevity. With her cultivation and age, it is not a problem to live for thousands of years, so how can she be considered old? Moreover, she is known as the first fairy in the Tiankai realm, with a profound cultivation and a high status. No one has ever dared to say that she is old to her face. She heard the hidden meaning of Li Qingluo's words. This girl must have done it on purpose. Mu Qingzi snorted in her heart. She didn't want to fight with Li Qingluo because it was meaningless. What she wanted to do most now was to drive this inexplicable guy away. The Empress of the Daking dynasty is indeed eloquent and eloquent, Mu Qingzi snorted in her heart, but did not show any displeasure, and remained calm. Although I am a little older than you, the cultivation world doesn't care about that. You and I can just be friends as equals. Ah, shouldn't I call you sister? Li Qingluo tilted her head and blinked, looking at Mu Qingzi playfully. No need, Mu Qingzi said expressionlessly, this is the first time I met you today. We are not familiar with each other. You don't have to be polite. That's right. Maybe you will call me sister in the future. Li Qingluo didn't know what she thought of. A smile suddenly appeared on the corner of her mouth, and she seemed to be in a very happy mood. Mu Qingzi frowned and thought that this girl was too annoying. She didn't want to bother her anymore, so she planned to leave. Before she took a step, Li Qingluo suddenly raised her head, and her beautiful eyes flashed with brilliant light. Let's make a bet. Bet? Mu Qingzi was startled and stopped. Yeah, Li Qingluo nodded. What bet? Mu Qingzi was a little surprised. This little girl had an unusual way of thinking. She couldn't understand what Li Qingluo wanted to do. Let's bet on who will be the elder sister in the future. Li Qingluo smiled cunningly and stretched out her slender jade hand. If I am the elder sister, then please call me elder sister and listen to me in the future. If I am not, I will recognize you as the elder sister and listen to you in the future. Her eyes were fixed on Mu Qingzi, as if there was a provocation in her eyes. Mu Qingzi frowned slightly, wondering what Li Qingluo was up to. The two stared at each other. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mi and Bulletin Leng. Chapter 280. After a while, Mu Qingzi suddenly smiled and said softly, okay, I promise you. That's great. Li Qingluo smiled like a flower, with an intoxicating blush on her cheeks. Mu Qingzi couldn't help but smile slightly. The atmosphere between the two of them suddenly became much more harmonious. Then let's make a pinky promise. Li Qingluo stretched out her right hand. Mu Qingzi hesitated for a moment, then made a pinky promise with her, and said with a smile, this agreement is just a joke, don't take it to heart in the future. No, 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 I'm not kidding, this is true. Li Qingluo smiled brightly, let's make this a deal in the future. As she said this, she looked in the direction of Qin Mu intentionally or unintentionally, her eyes full of a little pride. If it was based on the order of first come first served, then she would definitely be considered Mu Qingzi's sister. She was now looking forward to Mu Qingzi calling her sister, so that she could overshadow Mu Qingzi. Qin Mu looked at Li Qingluo, who was so proud and looked like a winner, and couldn't help laughing. This girl said so much to Mu Qingzi in a roundabout way, just to take advantage of her in addressing her. However, Mu Qingzi was also silly and cute. She actually made a pinky promise with her. I guess she is still confused now. Qin Mu shook his head and laughed. At this time, Mu Qingzi didn't notice these. She nodded lightly, not wanting to pay attention to Li Qingluo's childish mentality. She just wanted to leave here as soon as possible. Everyone in the hall looked at Li Qingluo and the other two at the same time, with strange expressions on their faces. I don't know what grudges there are between them. Since almost all the Holy Land sects in the Apocalypse domain have arrived, I will say a few words about the attack on Dakin. At this time, Mo Xianchen of Ziwei Immortal Palace stood up, swept around the hall, and said calmly. This attack on Dakin is for revenge. You are all the top masters of our Apocalypse domain. I think you must have made preparations long ago, but for the sake of safety, I think we still need to discuss it. Hearing Mo Xuanhuan's voice, everyone around him held their breath and quieted down. They knew Mo Xuanhuan's temper and was very measured in what he said and did. Since he mentioned the discussion, there must be important matters to be announced. Mo Xianchen looked around and continued, "This battle is of great importance. I hope we can unite and fight against Dakin together, so that we can ensure that nothing goes wrong." His words made everyone present nod. Palace Master Mo is right. Yes, Palace Master Mo is right. Palace Master Mo, rest assured, we will cooperate with you. I support you too. Everyone present nodded in agreement, expressing their willingness to cooperate. The great Qin dynasty killed their saintly ancestors and destroyed their sex foundation. How can this blood feud not be avenged? This is the hatred in the hearts of every powerful person in the apocalypse domain. Everyone, this matter is of great importance. We must work together. Mo Xianchen smiled faintly and said, "Since everyone is willing to support, I won't talk nonsense." He paused and continued. "The major sects in the Fengling domain have not arrived yet. The army will not be assembled until the day after tomorrow. By then, they will be at the gates of the city. The great Qin royal family will definitely send reinforcements to reinforce, but we just need to be prepared to meet the great Qin's counterattack at any time. In addition, I suggest that tomorrow night, each sect sends masters to sneak into the enemy camp and assassinate the high-level members of the great Qin royal family." Hearing this, many powerful people frowned slightly. This is indeed a solution. After all, as long as the Qin royal family is dealt with, even if Qin sends reinforcements, it will not cause any waves. However, this sneak attack on the Qin royal family will damage the reputation of the righteous path. If it is spread out, it will probably cause criticism. Moreover, if the Qin royal family is aware of the crisis, they will not sit and wait for death, but will definitely fight desperately. What? Is there a problem? Mo Xianchen noticed that the atmosphere in the hall was a little abnormal and asked. Ahem. An old man in a grey robe coughed lightly, stood up, and said, "The plan that Lord Mo said is good, but doing so will affect our reputation. If outsiders know that we assassinated the Qin royal family, it will have a very bad impact on our reputation, and doing so is also very risky. Yes, we have so many sects and so many cultivators. Why do we need a sneak attack? How embarrassing is that?" Another old man in a white robe also nodded, agreeing with the words of the old man in a grey robe. "Palace Master Mo, I think this move is too risky and difficult to implement. Palace Master Mo, although we are here for revenge, we have a special status and cannot be criticized." The other sect masters and elders also spoke up and expressed their opinions. They all felt that using such despicable means was contrary to their status. In the final analysis, they looked down on Dakin from the bottom of their hearts and felt that their own strength was strong enough to completely defeat Dakin. Mo Xianchen looked at these arrogant monks, frowned slightly, and said, "I have considered your concerns, but only by doing this can we completely cut off the retreat of the Dakin royal family. If they choose to retreat and defend, and wait until we consume too much before attacking, our chance of winning will be much lower. As for reputation, as long as we win, we can naturally reverse it." Mo Xianchen smiled slightly and said confidently, "That's true." The grey-robed old man sighed. "I agree with Palace Master Mo's point of view, and I also think it's best to do this. Yes, as long as we can take down Qin, it doesn't matter if our reputation is ruined. Yes. Although our reputation is more important, if we win, what does the sacrifice mean?" "I agree too." The other strong men all agreed. Although it was a bit embarrassing, in order to win, they could no longer control so much. Soon, most people agreed with Mo Xuanhuan's approach. Seeing the support of most people, Mo Xianchen was very happy. In this way, the losses of Ziwei Immortal Palace could be reduced to a minimum. We at Tianling Valley are willing to cooperate with Palace Master Mo's decision. A middle-aged man in black walked out of the queue and said loudly. We at Feiyun sect also agree. A beautiful woman also walked out. We in Danyang Valley are also willing. We, the 100 Refiners section. Our Qinglian Sword Pavilion is also willing to participate. As one strong man came forward to express his position, most people chose to participate, and only a few sects hesitated. Mo Xianchen smiled slightly and said calmly, since everyone agrees, let's do this. After the sects from the Wind Spirit domain arrive, we can surrender tomorrow night, and the army can launch an offensive the day after tomorrow. Then he looked at Li Qingluo and said with a smile, Your Majesty the Empress, what do you, the Daking dynasty, think of this crusade against Deqin? After hearing Mo Xuanhuan's words, the hall suddenly became quiet, and all eyes focused on Li Qingluo. Li Qingluo smiled lightly and said, everything will follow the arrangements. Yes, Mo Xianchen nodded and said with a bright smile, then let's rest now. Tomorrow we will launch an attack and crush the Qin imperial city. Okay. Ha ha ha, defeat the Qin dynasty. Defeat the Qin dynasty. As soon as Mo Xianchen finished speaking, a burst of cheers erupted in the hall. Everyone was excited, as if they had already seen the destruction of the Qin dynasty. Mo Xianchen looked in the direction of Deqin, his eyes flashed coldly, and murmured to himself, Deqin royal family, are you ready? It's night. A rustling sound came from a luxurious wing in Syria City. But then a thin soul barrier spread out, blocking out the sound.